Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Hello. My name is Alena Ukrainskaya, and I'm really happy to see you here, all of you here. I work at Great Education Center, and I'm a teacher of English for adults groups, and I'm an author of a group, children group, preteens group for children with some special educational needs. We are waiting for 1-2 minutes for everyone to join us. So now I will demonstrate our screen. So hello everyone who is joining. We are waiting for 1-2 minutes and we start. So again, for everyone who has just joined, can you please write in a chat box if you can hear and see me well, please? Just write plus if you can hear and see me well, please. Thank you, Katerina, Victoria. Thank you very much, everyone. While we are waiting for everyone, can you also drop me a message where you are from? I'd like to know the geography of our webinar, to know the places from which part of Ukraine you are. Hello, Kharkiv, nice to hear you. Any other places? Wow, North Macedonia, Kiev. Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Hello, Dnipro. The problem and or question which we are discussing with you today is really important, and I'm really happy that so many interested people. Hello, Rivne, Poland. Okay, very nice, very nice. Thank you, everyone. Let's start. Let's get started. So for everyone again, I'm Alena Ukrainskaya from Great Education Center. I'm a teacher here and I'm the author of the course for children with dyslexia, with dysgraphia. Also, I am a mother of 11-year-old dyslexic child. So today I will be sharing with you my experience, my different strategies, different tips as to how to work with children with dyslexia, what to do and actually what not to do with them at your lessons. Also, we will look at actually what dyslexia is, what are the reasons of dyslexia, and why some people have dyslexia and some people don't. Okay, so I would like to ask you to be muted, okay? If you have any questions, so send in the chat box, but be muted, please, because not to be distracted. Okay, thank you, thank you. Let's start. So before we start, before we actually discuss what dyslexia is, I'd like to share some statements about dyslexia. Some of them are facts. Some of them are myths. I'd like to dispel some most common myths with you and to talk if they are actually myths and if they are facts. You have on your screens, you can see 7 statements. Can you read them, please, briefly, and write in chat box which of them do you think are facts and which of them are myths? Write only the number and letter M or F. Some of them are fakes, some of them are facts. So what do you think about dyslexia? Maybe not all of them, maybe some of them. Victoria Savchuk, yeah, very well. Thank you everyone. Very quickly we discuss these statements, and about the first and the second I will actually speak in details because yeah. Okay, let's talk. Let's then please talk. Good. Number one. Students with dyslexia are rare. So some of you wrote that it's fact, some of them wrote that it's myth. So the fact is that this is completely myth. It's not true. And a little bit later, we will talk about how many people are with dyslexia and how many are not. So students with dyslexia are less intelligent. Completely myth, and we will dispel this myth together again. Students with dyslexia don't do well at school because they don't study hard enough. It's myth. Students with dyslexia work really hard. They spend much more time comparing with other students. Children do not grow out with dyslexia, unfortunately. Unfortunately, this is fact. It's not an illness, it's some disability, some disorder. We can't treat, we can't take a pill and grow out of dyslexia. Once diagnosed, children will, and then people, adults will have dyslexia all their life, unfortunately. They are able to live with it. They know how to live and how to survive in this world, but this dyslexia doesn't disappear. Students with dyslexia don't have successful careers. It's fake, it's myth. I hope you know a lot of examples of famous people, and we will also talk about it a bit later. A lot of artists, a lot of painters, writers, businessmen, from people from different spheres. They can become successful professionals, of course, if they work hard, if different specialists and professionals work with them in order to help overcome dyslexia. Not to overcome, but I mean like to be able to live with it. Dyslexia can be cured, it's myth, we just discussed it. So it can't be treated, it can't be cured. And not all reading and spelling difficulties are of a dyslexic nature. Yes, this one, the last, is fact. Why? The last is fact. So if the child has some reading and spelling difficulties, it doesn't mean that he has dyslexia. Because the main difference between people with and without dyslexia, that it's not only about reading and writing. So poor reading may result also from different vision and hearing impairments, so some problems, even inaccurate instructions, or just environmental negligence when sometimes some parents don't care about their children, unfortunately. So dyslexia doesn't cause problems only in reading and writing. So if the child is bright at math, if he or she doesn't have any organizational problems, if everything is okay, but reading is poor, this is not dyslexia. Dyslexia gives a lot of problems in all spheres of their life. So just poor reading, it's not a sign of dyslexia. And now I'd like to talk about points number 1 and points number 2, because in your comments I saw that someone wrote that students with dyslexia are rare. I'd like to show you that it's not and explain why. Look at this, please, picture and my screen. So according to American scientists, about 20% of all people on the planet are dyslexic. According to British scientists, who are more optimistic, about 10 people of population are dyslexic. So what it means that one student out of 5 is dyslexic. So the fact is that you are teachers, and in all classes where you teach, in every class where you teach, there are students with dyslexia. You may know that, you may not. Maybe these people don't know about that. Maybe parents don't know about that because dyslexia has different levels and types. Dyslexia can be subtle. Dyslexia can be not visible. A child may have some problems but doesn't know that it's dyslexia. It can be mild form, like middle, yeah, mild form, when there are some problems, but still it's possible to live, to learn, and actually to be surrounded by other children, by their peers, and actually be more or less successful. And dyslexia can be severe where or when people unfortunately can't learn in ordinary classroom. Okay, I have a good, interesting fact from Macedonia. According to the research that we made in North Macedonia, 12% in high school students faces with dyslexia. So this is actually, unfortunately, yes, unfortunately. Look, you write that different facts. Absolutely. So you may read different researches, different studies. You will face different numbers. We talk about like average, yeah. So some mainly Americans and British people, they made this research. In Ukraine, actually, in Ukraine, we don't have this research. No official information about how many children face or suffer from dyslexia. We don't have this. So I have information from American Dyslexic Association and British Dyslexic Association. So this information is taken from their official resources. So again, fact that you do know people with dyslexia, you do have them in your classes. Next. The second was about intelligence. I am not talking now about famous writers, famous painters, actors. There are lots of them, really. I'm talking only about businessmen, about people who are very rich, who are very famous. There are 5 of them on your screens. Can you drop me a message, please? Who these people are? Do you recognize any of them? Maybe not all of them, just some of them. Who do you see? Wait, I'm sorry. Who are these people on your screens? Do you know their names? Steve Jobs, of course. Number 4, this is Steve Jobs. Number 2, Bill Gates, of course. Head of Virgin Atlantic, yes, this is Richard Branson, number 5. Number 1 and number 3, you definitely know their names, but maybe you don't know how they look like. Yeah, Ford, very good. Henry Ford, picture number 1. Any ideas about picture number 3? Okay, I'll help you because maybe you don't know how he looks. So this is Nelson Rockefeller. All these people, what do they have in common? Of course, they are dyslexic, or they were dyslexic, but it's not only one reason why I have them here. All of them are millionaires. Some of them are billionaires. And the way how they describe their status, that was because they are dyslexic, because people with dyslexia, they have a different way of thinking, and actually it makes them stronger. You will be very surprised if you read, or maybe you have already read, the biographies of Americans in the Forbes list. You know, this Forbes list, the list of the richest, Americans. So about 60% from this list, the people have dyslexia. So that was about intelligence, and if dyslexia affects intelligence or not. Okay, let's move on. So what we have next? I'd like you to try to feel and to look at one text and to try to feel what our students feel when they read. I ask you, you are muted. Try to read this text out. Nobody can hear you. And write in the chat about the strategies which you use to read this text. Try to read some sentences, 2, 3, 5 sentences, and write about your strategies, what you use to read it. Just 30 seconds, please. Mixing letters, we made letter with common appearance, absolutely. And actually the question, what you do in order to identify the word. So what are your strategies? What actually do you do, yeah, to guess the word, or how do you understand? Guess. So mainly you guess. Any other memory? Just try to guess, revert the letters. Absolutely. Recognize. Because you know these words, because you are English teachers or people who speak English well. And mainly, yes, mainly what we do, this is a guessing the meaning from the context. You try to work out which letters or words were inverted, were flipped, or maybe some sounds or letters were omitted. Yes. So, and now I'd like you to tell you that these strategies which we are talking about, they are used by dyslexic students every time when they read. So reading, what happens with reading? Reading becomes slowly. They do not understand the context. Why don't they understand the context? Because they are completely focused on identifying the words or the sentences. So the overall meaning is unfortunately lost, especially if we talk about primary school. And children, very often when you ask them what the text was about, they don't know, they can't answer this question, and it becomes a very a real barrier to learning. Let's move on. Now, actually, what is dyslexia and what happens in our brain, and why some people are with dyslexia and why some are not. Just 2 minutes of some anatomy. Now on your screens, you can see a picture of very enlarged cell, which everybody has in the brain. As you may know, like each brain has billions of tiny cells, which transmit information from one part of our brain to another, and they are called neurons. This is a picture of one neuron. We have about 100 billion of neurons in our brain, and actually they are responsible for everything, for any procession of information, when we get it, when we read, when we hear, when we see or smell or anything. So these cells transmit information from one part of our brain to another. Each cell has like this kind of a tail, but it's called axon. We don't talk about axon. We are interested in this a lot of small shoots, which are called dendrites. This is the most important part of each cell, and you will see why. Now you have on your screens example of 3 neurons. Look please carefully, and main attention is on the place where all neurons connect. Can you see the bright spots in the places of connection, places where dendrites connect? They are called synapses. So every time when neurons meet, their dendrites, their short pieces, they connect, and in this place of connection, the information transmit. It's like electrical impulse from one neuron to another, and they transmit information. And actually, this is the most important part of theory about dyslexic people. So what's the difference? People with dyslexia have the same number of neurons. It's not about number, but the distance between 2 neurons in dyslexic brain is bigger. So they are located a little bit further one from another, comparing with people without dyslexia. So every time when they need to transmit information, to process information, they need more time to send from one neuron information to another. And again, there are more than 100 billion of these neurons in our brain. And every time we use millions of cells when we learn, when we read, when we watch, when we hear something. So millions and millions of cells are engaged or used at one time when we learn something. And that is why people with dyslexia need more time. So every time when you ask a student with dyslexia, ask a question, they need more time. When they read, they need more time. This is a main idea which I would like you to know about dyslexia. Every time when children do not complete the task, it's not because they are stupid. It's not because they are lazy. Just they have another brain, and it's physically necessary for them to have more time. We can't compare students with dyslexia and without. It's just not fair. This is what I'd like you to know about the brain. So, what are the reasons? Why are some people with dyslexia and some are not? So the main idea, and it's actually very interesting, that scientists don't know for sure. So it's not like only 1 or 2 reasons, unfortunately not. But the main reason that dyslexia runs in the family. Dyslexia runs in the family. So what it means? If one of parents has dyslexia, it's about 50% that a child will have dyslexia too. If one of children in the family has dyslexia or is dyslexic, it's about 75% that his sibling, which means like another one more brother or sister, will be dyslexic too. So it's not the only one reason, it's the main reason. Other reasons include different problems when or injuries when the baby is born because of lack of oxygen. So some injuries, brain injuries. It's about brain mainly, injuries during the delivery. Also, there are different types of infections which may cause dyslexia, but mainly this is a genetic component. But the question is still being studied and discussed. Let's move on. So how to notice dyslexia? What are the signs of dyslexia? And actually when dyslexia can be identified and who should identify. So first, it's not about parents and not about actually teachers. Teachers should or maybe even must notice that the child has a problem, talk about it with parents, and then send this family to specialists. So who can diagnose dyslexia? This is, first of all, it is a speech therapist, then doctors who can do that. It's neurologist, psychologist, and even psychiatrists. So it's about these categories of people. There are some special educational teachers. Not many of them do we have, unfortunately, in our schools, but there are some specialists who work with children with different problems, disorders. It's not only dyslexia, there are a lot of problems. But we talk about dyslexia, dysgraphia, so mainly speech therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists. These people are responsible for the diagnosis. But please, parents and teachers, they must notice that the problem actually is. So, as I have already said, it's not only about reading and spelling or writing problems. Dyslexia has different types, different levels, different degrees. Again, as I said, subtle, very, very small dyslexia, mild dyslexia, and severe dyslexia. I know a child, a girl, 11-year-old girl, who can't read in her native language. We do not speak about foreign language. She can't read, but she has perfect memory, and everything that she knows by heart. She has good marks, but she can't read or write at all. Luckily, there are not so many children with so severe type or form of dyslexia, but unfortunately they are. Of course, definitely reading and writing first and main factors, but others are reduced phonological processing. What it means, it's a difficulty in learning, remembering, and distinguishing the sounds of foreign language, any L2, we call it L2, not native language, especially those which do not exist in L1. English is very difficult language. It has a lot of differences in how the letter looks and how we read it. So that is why it is very difficult to identify where is the letter and where is where the sound is. So difficulties in speed and accuracy of processing orally presented information. This is about listening and speaking tasks. So when dyslexic child is trying to complete listening task, it's very difficult because they they process orally information orally, and if there are any words which they don't know, and there are words which they don't know, they become lost very fast. So speed, again, remember about neurons. They are situated further from from another, so it is a problem for them. Sound letter relations we discussed. Different aspects, acquiring different aspects of L2. So memorizing words, it's a very big problem. How to remember new vocabulary. They very often, they mix up words with similar pronunciation, or sometimes meaning. Everybody knows about chicken kitchen. So children, just yesterday I had a lesson where was a picture of kitchen, and children would call it chicken. Spelling difficulties we discussed. So a lot of problems with spelling. Unfortunately, people with dyslexia can't write very well. And what to do with that, we'll talk a bit later. Their memory problems, they can't kind of send information from their short-term memory to their long-term memory. And that is why they need much more practice than people without dyslexia. Time management skills problem as well. They are very easily, they can be distracted easily. Poor handwriting, it's about sometimes it's just impossible to understand what is written. And again, what to do with that, we will talk a bit later, and how to cope with that. So now let's start talking about actually what you can do in your classroom in order to help children with dyslexia. So accommodating. This is about you as teachers, what a teacher can do to help children to learn. Let's start with classroom management. Again, first, it's time. It costs nothing. You don't need anything to allow your students to work longer, to give them extra time for completing any task, any assignment. So please think about timing before. Then you can allocate some enough more time for preparation. What I mean, you can provide questions and different issues that you would like to discuss with your dyslexic students in advance. I don't mean that you should inform them a day before a lesson. No, but what you can do is to inform them before the lesson. Tell your student that, for example, Alex, today I will ask you this dialect, or today I will put you together in one pair with this girl, and you will perform some different tasks. So, you know, it's again, some people say, even teachers, that this is unfair about other children, but it isn't. You know, if the child with dyslexia, or any student, doesn't matter, child or adult, doesn't know this dialect, for example, these 5 minutes won't help. It's not enough to learn, but it is enough to revise, to look at the picture, to read maybe again, and just to be more confident about the question. And when a child, let's say a child, because we are mainly teachers of at school with children, we work with children. Confidence, it's like number one. It's before reading, it's before writing. So when the child feels confident, just it will be much easier to work for him and for you as a teacher. Just tell him or them in advance what you want to discuss in a lesson. Don't call them, call on the students like for spontaneous response. Your task is not to check, yes, if he's ready or not. Your task is to help them learn your subject. Never, please, never compare the results and the progress of your students with their peers. So what you need to do is compare the results of like some achievement with previous achievements. So we don't compare the students with their peers. Then about test. Later we will talk about assessment. Now about test. Try to vary, try to change the test if it is possible for your students. And nowadays, with different devices, with online education, I don't think that it's a problem to change the test condition. If it is possible, the best option is to provide or prepare a special place for a test without any distractors, without any extra noise. It's not easy. I understand that it's not easy in conditions where we work and live now, but you can do the test online. Different applications, different programs we have that can be used for testing. For people, for children with severe dyslexia, it can be even take-home test. It's also not a problem. Try to make any change for your test, for your students, to make their life a bit easier. And first, what you can do is to check everything orally. If you can do that, and in English, in our subject, it's not that difficult to check if a child knows anything. What is it? Vocabulary, grammar. We are teachers, we know how to check if student knows something or he doesn't. Next point, avoid reading out in the classroom. I'm sure if you read anything about dyslexia, the first thing which you could find, it's about reading out. Please don't ask your students in front of the class to read out. If it is really necessary to check reading, you can do it in two ways. First, you can ask your student to stay after the lesson and to be together with them without other students and to read. And the second, which I personally like more, is to allow your students record reading at home. Why I like this type more? Because I am sure that the student will practice more at home before he records his reading. It will be beneficial for him in terms of practice, and he will really appreciate you this permission, and he will do his best in order to pass it or to complete the task. Okay. Next, some classroom environment. Also, try not to give the task to copy from the board. Very often we write something on the board, at the same time we explain, we talk, we show, but the fact is dyslexic people they can't do different things simultaneously. So they can either listen, either read, or copy, not all these three things at the same time. So if you use your board, if you write a lot of things, what you can do is to prepare different handouts. You prepare for your lesson, you have some notes, and you can prepare it for your students with some summaries, with some points, with some conclusions of the lesson, and just give your students before the lesson. Just they can stick it in their notebooks and not waste time for copying. So why, again, when they copy, they focus on spelling, on writing. They can't hear anything that you say, that you tell at the same time. Good. Let's move on. Now we are talking about reading and writing. So actually what you can do to help your students read and write. There are 5 questions about the text itself and what you can do with this text. So usually we have now a lot of books, very nice books with pictures, with very good, very well, organized text. but sometimes you need to prepare text yourself. When do you need to do that? It's of course if you want to accommodate your dyslexic students. So very often the texts in the book are difficult for your dyslexic students. They can be okay for your class, but for some learners, especially young learners, they may be difficult. So what you need to do is to choose reading texts for your dyslexic students. So what you need to remember about it? First of all, it's about the story or the topic. So it must be interesting. What the text needs to do is to kind of awaken curiosity of your students, and you just need to make them read. Not you, maybe the text should make students read. It should have some intriguing, maybe pictures, some titles, anything intriguing. So they should be interested in the text. So once they have started to read this text, the text should motivate them to read. The second, does it mean the text should be short? Of course not. It always depends on the level of learners. At lower levels, students will be able to read, of course, short texts, not difficult texts. But when they are more advanced, you need to introduce longer texts, but the text can be long. But what you need to do is to kind of break this text down in smaller sections. So if you have a page in the book with long text, it is very difficult for dyslexic students to read this text. It should be divided or broken down in smaller paragraphs. And it's very nice if they have titles. Just the person wouldn't be lost. He will know. We always have kind of questions after post-reading tasks, and they should know where they need to look for necessary information. So break the text into smaller paragraphs, smaller pieces, so that it will be easier. About vocabulary and grammar in the reading text. As I have already said, dyslexic students find that very difficult to understand a new word from the context. Second. So from the context, from the context, it's usually very difficult. About 5% different texts in our books, even at different tests, exams, we know that about 5% of all vocabulary can be guessed from the context. But it's not about dyslexic students. They just can't guess the meaning of the word from the context. If they read it or if they hear that, it's very difficult, even if it is an article, even if it is some preposition which they don't know, they become lost. So what you need to do is, if it is possible, adapt the text. For younger learners, you may use different pictures. It's a kind of pre-teaching vocabulary. Any type which you like, you can pre-teach vocabulary with pictures, with glossary, with definitions, even with translation in their L1. It's absolutely not a problem, especially it's not actually a problem for all people, but for dyslexic people, of course, the same. So use it if it is necessary. If it's not possible to adapt the text, so then it's vitally important to use different glossaries. So any type of pre-teaching will be a good idea. Appearance of the text. First, it's about size of like font, yes, so which you use. It should be about maybe not about, but between 13 and 16 point. So it can't be small and not too big. Too big is also distracting. Please avoid using double columns when your students read the text. Avoid using underlining and italics. Otherwise, the text looks like endless. If you use the whole text in italics, it looks endless, and again, they are lost. If you need to highlight any part of your text, you can use different color or just make this word or phrase bold, but don't underline it, don't write it in italics. So I said, please try to divide text into sections, so that would be beneficial for them. If it is possible, use titles for paragraphs. That would be also very nice. Pictures are always welcome. What else? Some students find it helpful, and I also read a lot about the color of paper which you use for your text. Some people say that it shouldn't be purely white. It can have some different pale colors, but my opinion, that actually doesn't matter. It shouldn't be bright, but if it is white, it's okay. But a lot of books write and say that it shouldn't be white. But if you have some pale colors of paper, so you may try. Maybe it will work with your students. Next, other recommendation about number 5, which I'd like you to recommend, is about recording. All English books have a lot of audio recordings, but it's only about listening tasks. If we talk about reading tasks, we don't have any recording. So what you can do, if you want, of course, it doesn't cost a lot, it doesn't take much time. Again, with today's equipment and devices, you can record the reading text and send it to your dyslexic students so that they could listen to this text as many times as they need. And one more point about, usually after the reading task, we have post-reading discussion. When we discuss, it can be task with true, false questions, with multiple choice questions. They are very nice and they are very fine. But one thing that you should avoid, this is open-ended questions. I mean, when children or students need to write the answer. Please don't make your dyslexic students write. If it is reading task, the answers should be done orally. Okay, let's move on. Multisensory approach and spelling. If you read anything, about dyslexia before, you should have read about multisensory approach. So when we talk about multisensory approach, we mean that we use different senses to process information. So mainly it's about, we have visual sense when we see something, it's auditory when we hear something, then tactile when we can touch something, and kinesthetic when we walk, when we play, when we run, when actually some movements at the same time when we teach. So the more senses we use, the better result we have. And actually, it's not about only dyslexic students. It works with everyone. It makes your lesson funny. It makes it interesting. All children will like your this type of learning. So to use sight, hearing, movement, and touch, it really gives your students more than only one way to connect with something what they learn. So number one, color coding, we will come back to it when we talk about teaching grammar. Now I'd like to talk about some spelling things, how we teach spelling, and what we can do here. I will show you some pictures, what I do at my lessons and what you can do. It's not expensive, it's easy to organize. You may have some problems with cleaning afterwards, but it's a great fun. So what we do, we use this sand and we need some tray to use it. You spread out the sand and with a finger you write different words. So what is important? So when they write, students say the sound each letter makes. So they say like k, a, t, cat. At first we don't teach them letters, we teach them sounds. We start with sounds only. Later we introduce the names of the letters, but we start with sounds. Okay, so then they first, of course, pronounce sounds, then they blend the sounds together and they can read the word aloud. Can you send me a message, not send me, write in chat box which senses are used in this task? Again, we have, we use sight, hearing, tactile, and kinesthetic. Is it about visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or tactile? What do you think? Which senses are used in this task? Sight, tactile, hearing. Absolutely. We see what we do. We hear because we pronounce, and we touch, sorry. So it's about tactile. Very nice, very nice. Next task. This is what we call skywriting or air writing. So this type of writing, it kind of reinforces the sound each letter makes through muscle memory, so-called muscle memory. We start writing in the air and we start with very big letters. Every time make them smaller, 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 and only after that we copy this word in the copybooks or some notebooks. You can use this way to reinforce commonly confused letters, for example, B and D, which is always a problem for dyslexic students. So write them first in the air, make them smaller, B and D, M and N, P and Q, most confused words. And again, they use two fingers and they pronounce the sounds each letter makes. Next, it's very nice way. I like it also very much. These letters cut out of sandpaper. I think you know sandpaper. It's a very rough paper, often used in buildings. So when you touch it, it's not smooth, but it's very rough. So children, it's very fun activity, very nice activity, because you can change it in any ways. It can be like competition between two teams of children. They can do it with their eyes closed. So they just can guess the word or letter or a sound. It also is a very tactile way of teaching and learning different letters and their sounds. So students trace each letter and they say the sound each letter makes. So you can feel the shape of letters when you write. Again, you can close eyes and make it as a funny game. Next idea, what you use. I think all teachers in primary school have something like this. So if you again read any information about dyslexia, you should have read something about Barton reading program. It's a very popular in America program. This program uses color-coded small tiles in various ways to help students connect sounds with letters. We use different tiles, and they have different colors for vowels and for consonants. So we like build a word from these tiles. You can use cards, it's not a problem. I don't have these magnets. I have cards with different colors for vowels and consonant. And always, again, when we read loud the sound each letter makes. And like kind of the next step of the same activity, it's a very helpful activity, very nice for all students when you learn new vocabulary and you teach them how to write. So it's about spelling as well. You need piece of paper, 3 boxes, which are called read it, build it, and write it. You need cards with sight words. Sight words, I mean like your target language, which you need to teach at your lesson. These tiles or letters, and actually marker. This is what you need. First, make your students read the sight word. Then the second step, they build the words themselves. And the last step, they write this word. Again, different senses are used. And it's very nice for dyslexic students. So you can prepare a model of this. You can laminate this page and use marker every time you need, because marker is easily removed with a wet wipe. So you can use it. Okay, next. It's okay when students can at least read or write at least something, but sometimes students actually can't read. Let's talk about different effective vocabulary teaching, how to make your students read and write. It will be next. Sorry. So different tips for effective vocabulary. So actually all tips are on your screen. First, about number of words. It's about 6 to 8, I think up to 10 we have in our regular lessons. With dyslexic students, I try not to use more than 7. 8 is okay if some of words they already know. I always try to give a new set of cards in which there are 2 maybe words that they know, just to make them again more confident in it, because sometimes they can't learn anything, but they feel a bit more confident if they know at least something. So it's about number of words. When I say do not overwhelm students with information about new words, I mean that, again, it's primary school. It's absolutely enough to explain the meaning of word and its pronunciation. So this is first step. We don't start with spelling. We don't start with collocations. We start with the meaning of the words and its pronunciation. Later, then they can associate a spoken form of the word with meaning. We can teach the spelling, and only after then maybe some less frequent meaning of the words, and then different collocations. teach the words in context. We never give the list of new vocabulary and never ask students, just learn these words and you will get a good mark. So no, always new text we teach in context. Next, it's about repetition and revision. All students need to revise vocabulary and to recycle it. It's truth about all students, especially young learners, but the main difference is between dyslexic and non-dyslexic students that according to some studies, students without dyslexia need to process in different way a new word about 7 or 8 times. I mean, to read or to hear a new word or to write it, so in different way about 7, 8 times in order to learn it. But about dyslexic people, it's about 100 times. It doesn't mean that we need to repeat one word 100 times. It doesn't mean that we need to write one word 100 times, but we need to do it in very different ways. So write, as you have just seen, in the air with plastilene. We use plastilene, some clay, in the sand, on each other's back we write the words, on the palms we write the word. So in different ways, but it's about 100 times in order to remember a new word. It's not, of course, about one lesson. It's about some range of lessons. Reviews, definitely you need to revise. So we already discussed it, that we don't teach similar sounding words at the same lesson, so try separate them and use a lot of different multisensory techniques which we just discussed. Yes, so next, if a child is a very young learner and you think that he or she has dyslexia, one very nice way, next one, I will come back later. One very nice way to teach them sounds and letters. So this is sound image relation. So it's typical example in any language, like when we learn or teach alphabet, we have a picture which students know, and we associate it with sound and letters. Nothing new for you, but there are some children who can't read at all. So what we do, we use the pictures for reading. Every time we read, we use pictures. They should know all the pictures, all the words in these pictures, and be able to identify the first sound. So for apple, this is A, banana B, kangaroo K, fish F. No problem. Let's play and let's try to read. You have a sentence which is made of sounds. First sound of each picture. Please read the word, the sentence. It's one sentence, and write in chat box what the sentence is. Can you try, please? Use only the first picture, the first sound of the word in the picture. And write it in our chat box. Try to read and read. Yes, Kate, Oksana, yes, you're absolutely right. I can see that some people have already read that. Any other ideas? So word number 1, train, said it's T, orange O, mouse M. So it's Tom. Tom has a dog. This is a sentence. Yes, and some of students who can't read at all, they look at these pictures and read the words. A little bit more difficult word. It's also one sentence. Try please to read it. And also send a sentence in the message box. This green creature is iguana. It's not a lizard, it's iguana. So someone is ready. As somebody is in a forest. Yes, Marina, you're right, but what is that? Somebody. Fish, it's a foo. Oh, and fox. Yes, absolutely. A fox is in a forest. So it's fun, isn't it? So I know my colleagues also like playing with me these games every time when they see that. So you're absolutely right. So you use these techniques to play and to connect the sound and the letter together. And of course, we use the images. If you may hear about Davis, Ronald Davis. It's a very famous author, dyslexic person, also who wrote a book about teaching people with dyslexia, and he claims that what you teach or what you know should be based on images. And this is actually what it is. We make a very strong relation between an image for our memory and between sound. I'd like to show you one more picture. This is from one book we don't use because it's pretty old. It's a vocabulary lesson. Just 30 seconds. Look at this picture and write in chat box which problems we have with this lesson. Just any ideas. Look at these tasks and tell me what the problems are and actually what to do with these problems. Vocabulary lesson, pre-intermediate level. Any ideas about the problems in this lesson? It's a picture of only one page. Vocabulary lesson. No ideas? Small pictures, too many words. Absolutely, Oksana. So the main problem is that there are so many words. Only in 2 pictures we have 25 words. If you look carefully at task number 5, we have 10 words more. So totally it's about 35 words in one lesson. And if you look at task after number 5, vocabulary builder, page 126. So what is there? Yes, more vocabulary. Why? Because some people think, why not? The more, the better, but it isn't. So what you can do for dyslexic students? Yes, you're right. Divide into parts, tasks, bigger font, less pictures. So pictures can be used, but only one of them, right? So not so many pictures. You divide it in different lessons, and actually it's not only for dyslexic, it's too many vocabulary for all people, not only for dyslexic. If you see there are some listening tasks and they demand also using different senses. Hearing and visual at the same time, it's good for multisensory approach, but it's not good for different skills. You need to listen and you need to actually read at the same time, and there are new vocabulary, there are new words with new vocabulary. So this is a very not very, but it's a bad example of a vocabulary lesson for a dyslexic student. Okay, we are running out of time a bit, so let's move a bit faster. This is, I just wanted to show you the example. It's a photo of vocabulary lesson from my lesson with my elementary students. It was about food and drinks. And that was the idea which we use to remember words. So we use a lot of pictures to revise new vocabulary. So this is looks like my Tom is my brother. He likes food. For breakfast, he has cereals or pancakes. He has his lunch at school at 1 p.m. He usually eats potato with chicken or fish, so on so far. So this is very good idea if you have time. It's not difficult for me because I have all these pictures for this vocabulary like flashcards. So I just make them smaller and use the same pictures which I use for teaching new vocabulary. I use them for next lessons, for revision, for any type of revision. Children like it very much. Children like this task very much because usually they know all these words and they are really proud of themselves. Next, some ideas about grammar. Some ideas about grammar. I will speak a bit faster because we don't have so much time left. So when we use grammar books, different grammar books for teaching grammar, usually what we do, we have a grammar which was presented in a previous reading text or maybe audio dialogues or any audio, so which we learned before. Then usually in books we have a table with rules and teacher starts discussing rules and explaining rules. With dyslexic student, it doesn't work well. So what you need to do, you need to make your students notice grammar structure. So they should notice it themselves, and only after that you need to explain it. So what you can do, you ask your students to identify and underline the examples of a new form in the text or maybe audio script if it was listening. So this way, when they see these new structures in context, and then later they can relate it to the communicative function before they actually analyze it grammatically. And when they notice, so mainly again, first they notice grammar structure, and only then you present these rules in multisensory ways. What I mean, do you remember color coding? I promised to tell about it later. So for example, students learn prefixes or suffixes. What is multisensory way now? You use different colors for different parts of speech or for different parts of the word. And make it as a rule, if you use, for example, green color for verbs, it means that all verbs should be green all the time. It's not like today they are green and next day they are red. So use the same. You can use it for prefixes, for suffixes, but again, your students should know if they see a new word with the first part of it, which is green, they know that it's a prefix, for example. Plenty of practice. So the same rule as we talked about vocabulary, a lot of practice and plenty of different tasks. So after students notice grammar, after you presented the rules and explain it, it's time to start controlled practice. So controlled practice, first controlled practice must be done orally. We don't make students write when we give them first practice, orally first. Then you can start with different activities and then they should require minimal writing, such as multiple task, multiple choice task, I mean, or matching activity. So minimal writing. And only after that, it can be a task, maybe fill in the gaps. Again, very, very little writing. Okay, next. I'd like you to look at these two sentences. It's a problem, typical problem. Dyslexic student says, how is your teacher? Instead of who is your teacher? Where do you eat dinner? Instead of when do you eat dinner? My question is, what actually is the problem? And what the solution of this problem might be? So can you please write it in a chat box? Why do dyslexic students make this mistake? How is your teacher instead of who is your teacher? And any ideas as how to solve it? Any ideas? They see question words like the same. Yes. So if you ask your dyslexic student who is your teacher instead of who or how, it's no difference for them. They hear it the same. They sound similar. Absolutely. What to do? What to do when there are a lot of question words? And usually, actually, if you open any book, any level, at least 5 question words will be given in the same at the same lesson. It's impossible for students. It's impossible for dyslexic students. So what you need to do is to separate these question words. How to separate, and again, how to make students remember that. Let's say it's a mind map for one question word. You do not write this word yourself. You give some examples. You give some examples of the sentence. You may write, I am at school, I'm in the park, I'm on holiday, I'm at home. And students should identify and guess and understand, work out which the word is. And only that you may close first your mind map, then open, and then they will see that this is about where. And that will be very nice for them because later they will associate the word where with at school, with park, with holiday, with home. And these mind maps we prepare for each question word, for each preposition, maybe if the lesson is about prepositions, and you do not write the word yourself. Your students should do it instead of you. So mind maps are very effective for words which sound similar. Next. And next one, which is also very important, about assessment. It's my main pain about assessment at school. So what dyslexic students feel, you can see in this picture on your screens. So all students always have the same test. Is it fair? It's a question. For dyslexic students, it's definitely not. So assessment. There are different types of assessment. It can be formative assessment or continuous assessment, which is used to check the progress of students to see how well they are learning during some period of time. And it can be summative assessment, which you do at the end of any unit or course or semester, anything like final. So what you can do, how you can help, if it's like Cambridge exam, if it is some final exam, ZNO or something, you unfortunately can't do anything, at least now. But if it's a lesson, if it's your test, you are a teacher, you are responsible for this task, you can help your student. What you can do? Accommodations. Accommodation, there's some changes to timing, to different layouts, to any other external element of the test that enables your students with dyslexia to perform better. So what you can do? Again, timing. Again, timing. Timing. What about timing? Students with dyslexia should be allowed about 50% more time. It can be 25, it can be up to 50, but they do need extra time, remember that. Any text which you give them, even it's not reading task, but if it has a lot of reading, it will be very, very difficult. So think about it when you prepare your text. If the test tests more than one skill, it can be very difficult. Again, I have already said about it. So please, if you check reading, it should be only reading. If you check writing, so then check writing. But at the same time, if students makes spelling mistake in listening test or reading test, so then don't please assess their writing unless you can understand it. If you can't understand, unfortunately, so difficult to assess. But one skill at a time allows them to use different tools. Spell checkers is okay. The list of irregular verbs is okay. Some visual help, okay. So again, don't think that it's unfair according to other students. They do really need your help and these tools in order to complete this task better. And of course, if it is listening test, for example, you need a multiple choice. The best way what you can do is a multiple choice of questions in pictures. If you need some writing, make it as short as possible, just not to make them waste time reading these tasks. Next, actually, this is mainly what I wanted to tell you today. Just some information in case you know some families, some students, they might need our help. So we have two groups today, elementary. We have been working together for a second year, and I see very nice progress in this group, and happy to see that. And we have a new group which we have recently launched for beginners, about 4 and 5 learners in each group, maximum 6. So we don't let more than 6 people in one group. Please, this information can be useful for those who are interested. And one more important thing which I'd like to share with you about our Great Education Center, that it's a very big teacher training center. And at Great, we are running CELTA, Delta, TKT, CELT-S, CELT-P courses preparation. You may know that now teachers can take all these courses, CELT-P, CELT-S, and TKT preparation as official hours for their professional development. We are the biggest CELTA center in Ukraine, so we will be really happy to see you here and develop professionally together. Another point about Great Education Centers that we have the status of Platinum Center, and it's also the largest exam center in Ukraine. We offer you, your schools, to become our partners. We travel around Ukraine, we organize exams, we support our partners, we provide opportunity for their professional development. So if you are interested, you can follow the link in our website You can see it on the screen. So we'll be happy to see you and your school as our partner. And the last thing which I'd like to share with you, it's our new project. We recently launched it and we are really happy and proud of. This is IELTS preparation course on our platform Grade Online. It's a self-study course which lets you prepare for IELTS academic yourself. So it gives you really lots of different tools. So if you prepare your students for IELTS academic, you will be surprised really by the amount of information, number of tasks, different comments from professional teachers, feedback from our experts, more than 40 hours of practice with, of course, feedback. So you will find it in our platform online. And if you can register for a free trial, you can go through diagnostic test, you can look at study plans, and then if you are interested, so today we give you a 20 euro discount on any plan for this course. So if you are interested, use the promo code webinar and take your discount on any plan of IELTS grade course if you are interested. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now. This is again on your screens, my name and my email address. I will be really happy and glad to see you on Facebook, different social networks. We'll be ready and happy to help if you need any advice or anything. So if you have questions, you can ask them now in chat box. If not, so you will get this presentation and your certificates online. So let's stay in touch, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for joining the webinar. Thank you very much. And then, yeah, I'm happy, everyone. I'm happy, really appreciate that you liked it. Thank you very much. So if no questions, so have a nice day and goodbye.